Hello and welcome to my video on scripting. My name is Julia Johnson and this is my final video presentation for SPED800. So before I get into the specifics of what scripting is and what it looks like and how to collect data on it, I just want to say that it is a research-based intervention. It is an evidence-based practice that has been supported by the National Professional Center for Development for Autism, um, and is a commonly used strategy for children with autism in all age levels. I personally have seen it used with middle schoolers and high schoolers, but it is effective for 5-year-olds through 22-year-olds and even above that. So it's a really good strategy to use with any child with autism who struggles with engaging in verbal conversation, even if he or she has the words to do so. So these quotes that I've put up here, and if you want to read them, you can pause the video, are from a few of those studies that I read that I think speak to the effectiveness of scripting as a strategy pretty well. So basically what the study said, as well as what these quotes kind of summarize, is that scripting is a strategy that improves individuals with autism's communication with peers and with adults. It can be generalized to any situation, with the proper training and support for that child. But an important caveat to it is that there is a risk for a child to become dependent on the script that's being used for the conversation. So it's more specifically known as script fading is really the key intervention there, where the child maybe learns a script or it practices a script, but then learns how to use those words or talk in that certain way without the actual physical script in front of them, so that they're not dependent on the script. These were some of the articles that I read where I got those quotes. So if you want to go back and read them, they are excellent and give a good picture for what scripting looks like, what training looks like, and how to initiate that with all different types of students with autism. So before we get into the video for the procedure, I want to go over just generally what the procedure is for scripting. So kind of in a typical situation, the teacher, and that's a general use of that word, so it could be a professional of any sort, creates a script for a social setting. Now that can be something like, 5-year-olds playing during playtime at school, and a child with autism needs to know how to ask for toys or how to share his toys with another child. So the teacher would create a script for how that conversation should go. And that's one situation. And another one would be, a child or maybe an adolescent or a young adult who is applying for a job or an internship, and needs to practice what they should say to their potential employer, before, during, and after an interview. So that could be a more complex script that could be practiced between the child and the teacher, or the child and another student, or even a family member. So once the script has been written and developed, and that could take a few seconds or it could take a long time, depending on the complexity of it, the student will read the lines in dialogue with the teacher, practicing pace, intonation, rhythm, and wording. So in the situation where it's a child who's asking for a toy, the line of dialogue they might be practicing would be, "May I have a toy?" or "Can I play with the dragon?" And instead of, maybe that child typically would just say dragon to another student, having all those words there, practicing how you would say it, the kind of the polite tone to it, and the proper pacing and the wording would all be practiced with that teacher, or sometimes with a peer role model, if that's an appropriate situation, so that the child has the time and the space to practice how to speak properly in those social situations, so that when the situation arises at a later time, the child is no longer or it isn't uncomfortable or anxious about what may be going on, and also can put the other person at ease, their dialogue partner at ease, if that person isn't really sure how to talk to someone who isn't really a good, very good conversationalist. So that student will then use those rehearsed lines in the social setting. And now sometimes those lines are in front of them, but that's typically discouraged because of the dependence on the scripting that could happen. And more likely they're going to be memorized, or the lines might be slightly different than they use in the actual conversation. So that instead they have the general gist of what they're supposed to say, as opposed to the line by line quotes of what they had practiced in the scripting session. And like I kind of mentioned before, scripts can be used for general or specific situations. So a child can have a script for generally talking to peers at school, or it can be a very specific situation like ordering food at a fast food restaurant. So those are two different types of situations in which scripting could be appropriate. So there are three extra components or important components to scripting or script fading that I would like to mention here as well. The first one is fading. So I've talked about that a lot so far in this video, but basically the goal is to become independent in conversational situations and verbal exchanges. So the script needs to be faded as much as it needs to be built up for the child. So not only practicing saying the lines, but saying the lines without the actual script in front of them, and generalizing that to multiple situations with different people in different places, figuring out where and when those lines would be appropriate to use. Modeling. The teacher and or a role model student can demonstrate how to voice those thoughts that are written down on the paper. Um, an example from media that I always think of with this is in the TV show Parenthood, which in that show there's a character who's a child with autism, and his cousin is practicing a speech with him, a speech that he has to give in class. And so she kind of role models how he should be saying the words, and he copies that. And so it's a learning experience for that. So, having the child actually have a model for how they should be saying the lines that they're supposed to be practicing and getting down. And then also having reinforcement. So for a lot of students, that social reinforcement of having the attention, getting the friendships that may come from learning these lines, or practicing verbal exchanges, or even if they get a job because they were able to properly articulate themselves in that conversation, can come into play for various students, as well as physical reinforcers. So favorable items may be used for those younger children or older children who need that extrinsic motivation in order to complete tasks that are asked of them in class. So reinforcement should definitely be used. Verbal praise, physical praise, whatever is needed for that child, so that they feel like they're being successful in this process.
In the following clip, you will see me teaching scripting to a student. Assume that this student, because it's actually an adult, is in high school and has autism, and is fairly high functioning in terms of his academics, and is in all core content classes, but struggles a lot with social and emotional aspects of the school day. So in the clip, I am teaching the student how to approach another student and ask them about their day and how they're doing. And so she has a card in front of her that has her lines on it that would be used for the script. So she will initiate the conversation. I will respond how a peer would respond, and then we would go back and forth, her using the lines that have been developed. And then we'll talk about it as a kind of a reflection, and then we'll practice it again. For this time, I asked her to use the card a little bit less, so to be less dependent on it. And then after that, I had her reflect on how she did, and I told her that my expectation was that she would be using this in the morning with her peers, and I would be keeping track of that. So there are a few different parts to planning and then implementing scripting. One of those being actually planning out the script as a teacher, and then introducing the concept of scripting to the student, practicing that scripting as many times as is needed, and as many trials, taking data, of course, on the script and how that student did with it, reflecting back to the student their how they did and what they need to work on, and then making sure that they're actually generalizing that skill and using it in the situations that are needed. So yeah, I hope you enjoy my clip of that.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. How was class?
Class was good. We had science, and I thought it was pretty fun. We did an experiment where we had to dissect a frog. How about you?
Sounds like a good morning. I enjoyed my English class. We're reading The Great Gatsby, which is interesting.
Oh, cool. I really like that book.
Cool. Have a good day.
Okay, Liza, that was a really good job. You said everything and you engaged in a conversation. You started one, which was awesome. This time, maybe try to not look at the card so much and see if we can do it again. Does that sound good?
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. How's class?
Class was good. We were in science and we dissected a frog, which I thought was kind of gross, but also pretty cool.
Cool. I like my English class. We read The Great Gatsby. It's interesting.
Nice. Yeah, I really like that book.
Cool. Talk to you later.
Awesome. Okay, that was good. So you were less on the card, which was good, and you kind of said your own thing. I really appreciated that, and I think your peers will appreciate that too. How do you feel about maybe doing this with your classmates in the morning?
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of monitor you talking to your friends in the morning before class and see if you use these strategies or not. Does that sound good?
Okay.
And then we'll talk about it afterwards, all right? But you did an awesome job in that conversation.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So to finish up this video, I want to talk about data collection and evaluation. So typically when this model is used, the teacher collects data on the student's scripted responses. Now that's specifically looking at what he or she needs to be working on. Tone, pace, inflection, wording, and that could even be all when the child uses the scripted responses and when they don't, looking at their interactions with other people and whether or not the scripting was appropriate or not. So they count the number of trials that they do and when, where, and why these trials were done and with whom as well. Um, so, for example, in one school day, a teacher might do 3 trials with with Tony in this example, practicing the scripting of what he will say when he walks up to a student in the cafeteria, um, and uh, and what the response back to him would be, and then what he would say again. That could happen 3 times in one day, maybe in one period if it's a middle school setting or high school setting. And then the teacher will take notes or reflect on how much he relied on the script, if it was the exact wording in the script or not, and then how he sounded as he was articulating the lines. So also if we're looking at the school model or even in like a therapy model, there's a predetermined goal that's put in place before the intervention starts. So my example here was that Tony will begin a conversation in the cafeteria with a peer by greeting them and asking one question about them in 4 out of 5 trial days. So our baseline is maybe that Tony doesn't talk to anyone in the cafeteria, or if he does, he will raise his voice to ask for something in kind of in more of a abrupt manner. And our goal is to get him to a point where he can greet someone and ask a question about them as in starting a conversation in 4 of those 5 trial days. So the teacher will observe that behavior and see if it has grown or if Tony is progressing towards that goal. Another important component of this, and again, this would be used typically with the middle school or high schoolers, is self-monitoring and evaluation. So this is where the students themselves take responsibility for improving their conversation techniques. So Tony might know that this is his goal. So he would monitor himself. Okay, how many students have I said hello to in the cafeteria? And how have I said it? So thinking about those things, kind of that metacognition, thinking about his own thinking and how he sounds and how he's articulating his thoughts with other people, um, and then evaluating himself based on that. So maybe reflecting on, um, what's still a struggle, or what else he wants to work on, or maybe what isn't working in the scripting process, or maybe what is. All of that can be discussed throughout this kind of evaluation process, and the process of learning the script and feeding it, of course, as well. So that's kind of an overview of what data collection would look like. Now, if you want to look at other resources, these are a few other websites I turn to in my research on this to kind of give a broad overview for what scripting is. I highly recommend checking these out and sharing them with people if they have questions about it. So thank you for watching.